Oh, it's just my introduction. That's the only thing that ever gets cut off of these things. So.
Sorry,
but anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Jess, and she's going to get more into the program, introduce our folks. And well, actually, Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit about the Craft Beverage Institute really quick? Just give everyone here a quick overview.
Sure. My name is Jeff Rubin. I'm the director of the Craft Beverage Institute here in Asheville, North Carolina. We are the first two-year degree in the country in brewing, distillation, and fermentation. After 2 years, you achieve an Associate of Applied Science in brewing, distillation, and fermentation. And we are honored to be a part of this program and all these fantastic educational things that you guys are going to be. I'm excited to learn tonight. I'm honest. I always learn something, whether I'm emceeing these things or just being here and absorbing. I'm excited to hear what y'all have to say, and I appreciate you guys, even letting me ride your coattails with this fantastic series.
Great.
All right, Jess, I'm going to let you take over. And next month, you're getting full host duties, and I'm going to let you handle the recording.
I don't know if I would do much better. It was
at least we'll get one of these in its entirety.
Adam posted in the chat. So, well, yeah, thank you, everyone. Both panelists as well as folks joining us to learn something today. It's been really great working with AB Tech, specifically, Dwayne and Jeff, on developing, this programming. And while, we certainly have kind of like a nod or focusing on craft beer and thought leaders in that industry, really when we start to conceptualize, the different topics, it really is with the entrepreneurial spirit in mind, that, as a business owner of Burial Beer Co., all of these topics really, I can imagine, relate to just owning a business in general. So kind of think of it that way, craft beer kind of being the example throughout this programming. So as Dwayne said, we're here to talk about kind of quality of product and as that relates to sales. So kind of the topics that we've been through so far, they were kind of thought of in like a chronological sense of, how to open a business or why to open a business. And then we went into developing a brand with products. And then we went into creating infrastructure for your culture and for your business accountability and sustainability. And then the next step, is kind of getting your product out there. You're trying to get your product out in the hands of consumers. Depending on the size of your business, your product will move into the marketplace in different ways. And, speaking from my own personal experience as a brewery owner, the first time we sent a keg and then the first time we sent a can out into the market, it was terrifying, because quality is a concern, both, from an internal kind of like lab standpoint, is your beer gonna, does it have shelf stability? And then from a, retail standpoint, like, are the people who are selling your product going to take care of it? So we're definitely going to be discussing quality as a concept, as well as a tangible, measurable for your business's success, wholesale relationships, shelf stability, and the presentation of your product, and kind of like how to hold retailers accountable for the quality of that product. So before we get into questions, I'd love to go around and do some introductions. So first, Adam, if you, each of you, if you want to say your name, your position, who you work for, and provide some background on, like how you got into the position that you're in or the industry. So we'll go with Adam first.
All right. Hey guys, so my name is Adam. I am the territory manager for North and South Carolina for the Allagash Brewing Company. I've been with them for about 5.5 years now, but I actually started out as a tour guide and tasting room employee at the brewery, just right out of college. I was just like a senior in college. I was super into craft beer. Allagash was nice enough to give me an interview. I had no idea what the heck I wanted to do. I just wanted to work in beer in some aspect. So they were nice enough to start me out as a seasonal guest relations employee. But I've been down here in the Carolinas for about 4 years now. And, for those of you guys who don't know, Allagash, Belgian-inspired brewery out of Portland, Maine, known for Allagash White. But, I was happy to be invited to this today because I think quality is one of those things that Allagash is known for, and it affects all aspects of our business, including myself, the sales team. So looking forward to chatting with you guys about that today.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Anna?
Hi, yeah, so my name's Anna, and I'm an industry trainer for food, beverage, and natural products manufacturing with the NC Bio Network. I started this role about a year ago. I worked in quality control for beer and wine before that for about 7 years. Bio Network is a state-funded organization that supports industry in North Carolina in a number of ways. The training portion that I'm a part of, we teach short courses to people who work in food, beverage, and natural products manufacturing across the state in classes that are related to food safety, technical writing, audit preparation, and process control. All of this stuff circles back into quality really well.
Great, thank you so much. All right, Carrie, tell us about yourself.
Hi, my name is Carrie. I am the quality manager at Highland Brewing Company currently. Been in the industry for about 6 years now. Started more so on the yeast side with White Labs, and kind of made my way over to Highland 3 years ago. And have just done quality the entire time. Worked my way up from a lab technician to, some specialist positions, and now just kind of managing and growing our quality program at Highland.
Great, thank you. All right, Michelle, you're up.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Michelle. I am another industry trainer for Bio Network, and I've been there for about 2.5, almost going on 3 years now. So prior to working at Bio Network, I was a head brewer at a brewery called Flat Top, and also at Ben's Tune-Up. So dabbed my toes in beer and sake. I graduated from the Fermentation Science program at App State. And I worked in their lab for a little while testing cider and beer and wine. And the other thing that we have available at Bio Network that Anna didn't mention was labs. So we have some great lab services available to breweries within Bio Network. Thanks.
Great, thanks everyone. So the first question to kind of, I guess, frame our conversation is, kind of honing in on quality, quality of product, obviously kind of speaking more specifically about beer in this conversation. So like, what does quality mean to you and or your company? Carrie, you wanna go first?
Sure. Yeah, I would say, technically you can define quality in a number of different ways, but for us, it's really just meeting and exceeding our customers' needs, and kind of getting the whole company on board to build a culture of quality. And, from the way we hire to the way we test beer to the way we package it and put it out into the market, it's really just kind of having a specific mindset and more than just making sure our beer hits certain specifications or control limits, but really just kind of embodying that whole definition of quality and doing whatever we can to make the customer happy and make the best beer we can, obviously.
Great, thank you. Michelle, what are your thoughts?
When I think about quality, I think a lot about consistency, about getting that same flavor, the same thing that customer expects every single time. That's really challenging when your water might change, or your grains might come from somewhere else, or your hops might come from a different place. And so I know everyone's going to cringe when I say this, but in my trainings, I always talk about Budweiser and how consistent they are in their quality, because whether you get your Budweiser, in the United States or another country, it's the same.
Absolutely. Anna, you want to follow that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna sound like a parrot because Michelle and Carrie made wonderful points. Quality to me is meeting those defined specifications, hitting that consistency, meeting the expectations of the customer. And Carrie's made a great point: if it's not a part of your culture within your company, then it's hard to really get those first things right too.
Absolutely, yeah, all really amazing points. All right, Adam, what does quality mean to you and Allagash?
Well, I mean, I can go on and on about the beer side of things, but looking at it from a sales sort of lens, I would also say that, just making sure you're having quality sales call out in the market. If you are a ambassador for your brand, you want to be the best ambassador you can be, the best resource for your customers and your distributors. So I think, it goes to all aspects of the business, from the brewing to the sales team and just like paying your bills on time, just doing everything as best as you can, as right as possible. I mean, to me, that's quality is an overarching thing over many of the sides of the business, not just the beer.
Yeah, I think that that's a really great point that everybody's making is, yeah, if it's not integrated into kind of the fiber of the brand and the culture, then it's going to be challenging to get the buy-in from the people who are making, selling, have their hands in the process to take quality seriously. So that's a really great point. All right, how do you ensure quality of product out in the market? So this is a great question because we have different perspectives. We have the kind of like the lab side of things and we have the sales side of things. So Michelle, you want to take that one first?
Sure, there are a whole lot of different facets to this one. So you mentioned things like shelf stability in the beginning. So things like how is my product stored and whether or not it's refrigerated or basically, what's happening to my product once it leaves my hands, once it leaves the brewery. And so a lot of that goes into controls that you can ask for your distributor, the person selling it, the retailer to actually obtain for you and basically give you a letter stating, what your standards are. The other parts are making sure that you were able to, get it right in the first place in the brewery to the point where it'll maintain its quality status when it's on the market.
Great, thank you. All right, Adam, what are your thoughts?
I think ensuring quality, that is kind of like a three-prong approach from the sales sort of side. There's things that are contractually obligated with your distributors. Like for Allagash, our distributors are contractually required to keep our kegs in their coolers and the Allagash white kegs flipped upside down. So we make sure there's uniform suspension of that yeast and protein. So we have that hazy beer that we intend to sell in the market. But you're only as good as your relationship with your distributor. So contracts can only get you so far. There's a whole lot of educating and politely asking of things as well. We're always trying to nurture that relationship with the distributor. So, say an empty spot opens up in their cooler in their warehouse, they might be willing to slide Allagash white cans into that spot, or another one of our products. And then when it comes to the retail side of things, I think educating people about quality is super important, because oftentimes mistakes that you're seeing in the marketplace are a result of just not knowing. No one's trying to actively harm your beer. They just might not be aware of some things. So education is a huge piece of ensuring quality out in the market.
Great, thank you. All right, Carrie, what are your thoughts on how do you ensure quality out in the market?
Yeah, I totally agree with Adam on that. It really starts at the beginning and establishing a great relationship with your partners and distributors. But I would say also just choosing the right, people for your company and on your sales team to make sure that they really care about the product and, they're going to represent it in the right way while it's out there. And just, from a testing perspective, just making sure you have the right quality program in place and you're testing for the right things. And I would say on the other end as well, having some sort of product feedback avenue available is really important. That's been huge for us, and something I've really been trying to build lately is just making sure we have the right communication flow and, there is something wrong out in the market and we get that data and we record it and we kind of educate everybody as we go so we can improve ourselves and fix it for the next time.
It's really great. Thanks, Carrie. That's smart. I have to steal that one. All right, Anna.
Yeah, so it's a great point that having a standard for how your product is stored is really important, and also that it only works if you're prepared to follow up on that and have a good relationship with your retailers and your distributors. You also have some more expensive options like having field quality. So people out in the market that are deliberately going out and testing and making sure that your product is good. You can also retain your product and have like in-house checks of your product, doing analytics and sensory analysis over time. You'd need to keep your product in similar conditions to how you're expecting it to be into market for that to be impactful. it's not perfect, but it could give you an idea if something goes wrong.
Awesome. All right, we got a question from Daniel. I'm going to sneak in here. It's addressed to Carrie. What kinds of methods do you use and or think would work best for that feedback loop from market?
Yeah, I would say it's honestly been one of the toughest parts of my job lately. It's not as easy as you would think, but what's kind of worked for us is we've developed a form because, as I'm sure all of you know, things come in from all sorts of avenues, whether it's calls, it's, you know, word of mouth, it's from the hospitality team, it's from the sales team, it's from the production team. So I've really tried to streamline all of that and make a form that just kind of automatically tracks all the data and it's stored into one place. And also just trying to have one person have oversight of all of that. Because when you have multiple people kind of looking from different standpoints, it gets really tough to get the right info and get it all filtered into one place so you can have that bird's eye view. And I would say externally, just having a space on your website, whether it's the same form or something else that comes straight back to that same person. So it can kind of all just be collaborated together in one spot and easily looked at. That's been the most helpful for sure, but it's definitely repetitive and takes a lot of patience to build, I would say.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Daniel. That's a great question. So kind of thinking about, we talk about, defining quality, now like your products going out in the market. Most of us have to, in order to do that, you're using distributors, you're working with retailers, there certainly are direct to consumer sales, which, quality can also still be a concern then. So kind of what checks and balances do you think businesses should use to ensure that retailers and distributors are accountable for the quality of your product? So we're, kind of looking externally now, and, Carrie's touched upon that, but, I guess like what feedback would you be looking for? And then how would you, circle back and apply that ideally? So Adam, you want to take that first?
Yeah, absolutely. From the distributor standpoint, I mean, one thing that we do at Allagash is we do quarterly warehouse inspections at every single distributor that we work with. So that just involves walking in, doing a full warehouse walk with a member of their team, checking the dates on all the packaged beer, doing a full inventory count, just to make sure everything's being stored correctly. First in, first out, dates are rotated correctly, kegs are stored where they're supposed to be. And on the retail side of things, we also do a number of QC checks in the field. So we'll go into a restaurant or a bar, grab an Allagash White, ask to go into the back or grab the date off of the keg. So we're actively tracking how the beer is holding up in the market. And these are often, again, great opportunities to use education as your best sort of tool to hold people accountable. So that, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of times the mistakes that happen, they just don't know they're making the mistake. So if you can frame it in a way that, like, look, if you do this with your beer, it's going to make it taste better. More customers are going to buy it. It's going to help you sell more. It's going to help me sell you more beer. It's better for everybody. I think that's kind of the best way to sort of frame it. And again, just drawing attention to the issues immediately. And I can't remember who said it, might have been Anna, but being willing to follow up on that as well. That's a key piece to it. You can tell anybody something once, but actually making sure they follow through with it is critical. I would imagine that over the lifetime of a beer, the wholesaler and the retailer is in charge of it far longer than we are at the brewery. And there's not a whole lot you can do to improve a beer once it leaves. There's a hell of a lot of things you can do to make it worse. So I think really education is the big piece here. But maintaining that relationship with your distributor is very important, because ultimately they're your number one customer. If distribution is your main source of sales, you want to nurture that relationship and address quality issues delicately. You don't want to necessarily come in with a steel fist or whatever. But yeah, that's all I got on that for now.
Cool. Thanks, Adam.
I can keep rambling, so.
You'll have other opportunities to ramble, don't you worry. All right, Anna, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what kind of feedback would you be looking for, and how would you hope, that it gets applied back into the market?
Right, and Adam makes a great point that due to distribution law, it's more complicated in the alcohol and beverage industry to hold distributors accountable. So like trying to have an iron fist sort of like behavior toward them would be really ineffective, most likely, and developing a relationship is your better move. One of the best ways that I can think of to have some checks and balances with your distributors and retailers is performing regular audits of your own recall plan for your products. Part of which is going to be going one step forward, which would be to your distributor, and one step back to your raw material suppliers, and checking the traceability of your product. If your distributor sees that you're regularly practicing locating your product, there are a number of positive impacts to that. First, they're going to have experience doing that for you in the event that they really need to because you actually have a serious problem. And second, they know that you take your product quality seriously and that you're checking in and that you care and you're doing your due diligence. And so they see that you're probably going to expect them to do theirs.
Yeah, it's great. And yeah, recalling a product is not easy for many reasons, but so important. I think this day and age with craft beer, it sends a message to your consumers too, that like, this was a hard decision, but like we care enough about your experience too. So that's a really great point. All right, Michelle, what are your thoughts?
I guess Adam and Anna really said what I was going to talk to, but I guess I'll talk to something else then. The other thing that the food industry does is third-party audits. And so they might have like a certification that's internationally recognized or something that's of a higher standard that they want the people that they deal with to get. And so that way they know that somebody who's not involved with the product at all, that's unbiased, is actually checking in on them and looking at how everything's being handled, how it's being stored, how it's being manufactured. So that way, wherever that product is in that chain, you have another set of eyes on it that doesn't have skin in the game. Oh, and I want to say one more thing about retailers. So I was thinking about restaurants, tap lines, things like that. Quite often distributors are the ones who are cleaning those tap lines. And so if you have some sort of follow-up program for figuring out how those tap lines are cleaned and maintained, that'll go a long way to people's impression of your product in that moment when they're out. So just something to think about.
That is so true, Michelle. I mean, it's one of those kind of unfortunate things for breweries is that if somebody gets a pint of beer that doesn't taste good, the consumer generally won't go to the space of, it's probably a dirty tap line. They're most likely going to go to the space of, wow, this beer doesn't taste good. What's wrong with the brewery? So yes, that's a very good point. All right, Carrie, what are your thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, I don't know if I can add much more content because everybody had great ideas there, but I would definitely say just having that relationship and making sure you communicate when there is an issue and your team sees something wrong, and working with that distributor and how we both can improve and make things better, and doing that market research for sure in terms of either bringing product back to test it or if you're out drinking a pint somewhere and you get your own beer and it doesn't taste how it should, then I think just kind of speaking up and making sure you don't just say, oh, it's just maybe this one time type of thing. That can be really helpful as well.
Absolutely, great point. All right, so next question is, how do you ensure that your product is able to withstand time on shelves? And what benchmarks contribute to shelf stability? So I guess, Michelle, do you want to take this one first?
Sure. So they're the basics, right? Like colloid stability, or how clear your product is, whether or not it's hazy, and whether or not there are things that can gather in the can formation and cause changes, right? So a more filtered beer is less likely to spoil on the shelf, essentially. There's pasteurization. Depending on what kind of product it is, of course, some will withstand being on the shelf for longer, like darker beers. tend to age better on the shelf than the hop beers, just because of those chemical interactions that happen and the flavors that develop from that. It's been a while since I've been in a lab, so I'm sure Carrie and Anna will talk a lot more to that kind of stuff. But yeah.
The details.
Yeah.
All right, Carrie.
Yeah, so I would say, yeah, a ton of this is kind of just this really establishing your quality control and having the right utensils and instruments in the lab. Just to give some examples of things from, all the way from as soon as the beer hits the tank, we do something called forced fermentation, where it's kind of predicting where the beer will end. And that really gives us insight into, to make sure we don't have any refirm in the package and when we should crash the beer. And then obviously, just checking the beer every day and doing pH readings and gravity to look for either signs of contamination, and making sure you've hit that final gravity before you crash and move the beer along. And definitely, micro as often as you can. I think, certain labs have different capabilities, and PCR is kind of at the top of the line right now, but it's also very expensive. So at least doing some sort of micro testing, whether it's plates, PCR, whatever you have available, as frequently as you can, but definitely on that final product. And then in terms of the finished product, forced aging is a huge help. And just like Anna said earlier, is having that retain of your product in-house. I know space is always a concern, but trying to keep a certain percentage on hand for definitely as long as the shelf life, but even longer if possible. So you can go back and test that beer if something does happen out in the market, but also just for your own shelf life studies, to kind of give you a bunch of different data points to look at is very, very helpful.
Absolutely. All right, Anna, what are your thoughts on the question?
Yeah, so shelf life testing for sure, particularly for your new products. You want to know how the day one taste is comparing to a month, comparing to towards the end of your shelf life. You also want to run not just some sensory analysis on that and checking what it tastes like and what it appears, but also having your analytics and your micro to compare them to. And Carrie made a great point. If you're not doing this with your beer in a house, then you don't have any data to trend with. And so making sure you have those regular data points while it's in-house, and then get them from your retained beer to compare with afterward makes a really big difference. While working in beer QA, I had the experience with a new seasonal brand where its shelf life ended up being a lot shorter than expected for us. At a 1 month check-in, the beer, it tasted fine. The analytics hadn't changed, but there was a distinct haze that had developed that wasn't there when we had first put that beer in the market. At the time with this brand, the absence of haze mattered more than it does these days. I don't think it would have been a pull the product situation now, but that's what it ended up being in that time. But if we never would have known if we weren't checking on it a month into market.
Absolutely, that's a great point. All right, Adam, so from the kind of the sales point of view, I'm sure that from working in the brewing industry, you've been, informed, and you work with a quality team and all of that. So what are your thoughts on this question about kind of benchmarks that you think contribute to shelf stability, or what you're looking for when you're out there in the market?
We actually talk about shelf stability and quality a lot as a sales team, because it's one of the selling points that we use to try and get retailers to carry our beer. TPO is the big one that we talk about a lot. We invest a lot of money in high quality packaging equipment that ensures that you have a low amount of TPO. TPO stands for, I believe, total packaged oxygen, and it basically has an impact on how quickly the beer ages. So more oxygen, more oxidation, shorter shelf life, essentially. So that's one thing that we look for at Allagash. I think it's something like 40 parts per million. I don't know, it's above my pay grade. I just talk about the beer, but yeah, I mean, that's a big thing. We also keep a lot of our product in house as well to track it internally. Hundreds of tests done on the beer in terms of PCR, testing of the raw materials, sensory panels before the beer is released. And one thing that we use, it's called Panatrack. It's a inventory tracking software that basically, again, this is way above my pay grade, but it's able to connect all the raw materials to batches of beer and tell where the batches of beer are in the market. So if we are to have an issue from, maybe we get infected yeast shipment, or there's some issues with our, who knows what, we can see where all that beer is out in the market and quickly recall it, so we can address that issue quickly. But yeah, I mean, you guys hit most of the main points here. I don't really have too much to add besides that.
No, those are all certainly very insightful comments. I appreciate it. So, whether you're kind of, there's guidelines, and you guys talked a little bit about, benchmarks and stuff, but how do you kind of translate that into guidelines for your sales team, for your brewers even, and then, ultimately that ideally gets translated to your wholesalers and retailers? What kind of guidelines are being provided? Carrie, you want to take this one first?
Sure. Yeah, so I would say, just again, having everybody in the right mindset and always thinking quality. Obviously, my team always is, so it's easy for us to say that, but just making sure, from establishing or recording process deviations from the minute it happens on the floor. That's a big one. And it's really kind of the first line of defense we have when something does go wrong, or we hear about a batch in the market, is kind of going back and seeing if something was first wrong with the process. And then that kind of helps us develop our further testing plan. And, I think just in terms of, I think, is that kind of what we're looking for in terms of
something that I've found interesting through the years of kind of this idea of quality is also this idea that palates are different, and so that's something that I feel like we as a company have kind of gotten to a space because of developing some guidelines and being able to kind of articulate the profile of the beer and the expectations for it. But obviously certain people are going to be more sensitive to this off flavor versus that off flavor, or they're going to like bitter IPAs more than fruity IPAs. And so it's how do you kind of discern the different dynamics of palates to say this is the guideline and this is what our beer is supposed to taste like.
Yeah. So I think, that's super important, and kind of having that knowledge. And also we try to do frequent tastings with our sales team, especially when we have a new product hitting the market, and even take it as far as doing tastings now, they're virtual these days, but with the distributors, and just kind of introducing the product and really letting them ask all the questions that they want, and give them the info of everything from what's in the beer to this is how it tastes, and this is how it, can be perceived to this kind of customer versus somebody, that likes darker beer versus somebody that likes, the haze craze. So yeah, I would say just kind of having all that knowledge in the back of your mind and knowing what other people in the market are going to think of the beer, and kind of just, what they're looking for and how to convey that information. It's that's all definitely very helpful.
Cool. All right, Adam, what are your thoughts?
I would say the approach we do at Allagash is we try and have our sales team be almost like consultants to our retailers and our wholesalers. And we do that through educating the sales team. So, we have a few all staff and sales team meetings a year. And I'd say every single one of them we spend at least 2 hours with the QC team learning about off flavors, how they may have arose in, out in the market, and then how to address them. So, I think dedicating a lot of time to that kind of sets the culture for your employees too. We only have a limited amount of time to spend doing sales meetings, and we're spending 2 hours talking about quality. It sets the message that this is really important. So I think, the more time you spend talking about it with your team and your retailers, it just kind of drives home the fact that this is an important thing. yeah, I mean, that's all I really got for this one, I think.
Absolutely. All right, so Michelle and Anna, you're both kind of industry trainers, which this is a good opportunity to maybe like elaborate a little bit about what that means, because like I interpret that as this is probably something that you're doing a decent amount of. Like, how do you articulate, quality and guidelines in your line of work? Michelle, you want to go first?
Sure. So it's all clearly, the educational basis is to try and relate to the person you're educating as much as possible. So to bring that to the alcohol industry, when I was making sake was hard to get people to try for the first time or understand what it is or what those flavors are and decide whether or not they like it, because they have a different impression than what ours was, because it was American sake. And so it was really trying to help them understand what it was that you were looking for and what they were looking for by having an open communication. And a lot of that's about like encouraging those basic things that connect you to a person, like your body language and the questions you ask them, and making them laugh. I mean, maybe I'm getting a little bit into the educational part about that. Sorry, but
no, it's good. I mean, that's definitely part of it. So I appreciate that. All right, Anna, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so touching a little bit on the off-character training and descriptive analysis of a beer, I think that in regard to guidelines, it has to be sort of beer to beer and product to product. You can't have broad guidelines for your beer, because like a dark beer and a hoppy beer are going to age and behave differently in the market. And so it needs to be specific. And if you expect people to be able to identify when something's right and when something's wrong, they have to be trained on that. I focused a fair amount on sensory, and I'm teaching a sensory class right now as well. And people are really good at connecting memories to smells, and it's very connected to the emotional center of the brain and memory. But unless you actually really deliberately practice, you don't associate a word that is descriptive for a smell with the smell. And so no one's going to be able to, it's rare for someone to be able to tell you like, hey, this beer is supposed to smell like citrus and it smells like a dirty gym sock. It would be rare for someone to be able to naturally do that for you. You have to teach them like, this is dirty gym sock smell it, dirty gym sock. And then they'll be able to tell you the next time they experience that, like, oh, this is happening, it happened again. And so it really is like essential to train people if you want them to be able to like pull back specific information for you in regard to the guidelines of your beer.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that, like training your senses. Really interesting. All right, so we live in the world of the internet, and with that comes wanted and unwanted feedback at times. Some of the feedback one might call like constructive. It sadly seems like most of the feedback we get doesn't feel so constructive. So I guess, how would you advise people who are seeing, reviews about their product, and how do you kind of filter through some of the noise, and when can you tell that there's like a real red flag out in the market from a consumer standpoint? See, Anna, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, a good way to pull the noise, actually pull the noise out and get to the signal is if you're getting repeated complaints about the same style of beer, and then you find that you're getting repeated complaints from the same package date of beer, then you know that you actually have an issue that you want to address, at which point I'd say pull a sample from that package date and analyze it, find it out if that issue is repeatable to you, and then it's time for some root cause analysis and changes to the procedure moving forward. That's difficult to do if you're not retaining quality samples and you don't have a robust quality and record keeping program in place. And I would say that from a more emotional standpoint, if you have people saying like, worst beer I ever had, 3 stars on Rate Beer, I don't worry so much about that one, like keep an eye on the ones who are like it's distinct. It's like giving you some specifics, or that it's repeating. If maybe it's the same beer, but they're saying different things, I would say still check that out too.
Absolutely, it's great advice. All right, Carrie, what is your experience with consumer feedback?
Oh, so much. But yeah, I would say definitely, like Anna said, is just kind of knowing, what to look for is the first step. And obviously, if it's a customer injury or, there's endangerment to the public, which doesn't happen too often with beer, fortunately, but, that's obviously a zero tolerance for us, and we'll immediately either hold the product or and try to find what happened and get to that root cause. But other than that, it's, getting multiple complaints about something. That's why I would say tracking all those complaints is really important. So you can go back and look and see like, oh, it was, packaged on this day. It's the same brand. We must really have a problem. And then from there, we kind of start our investigation and use our retained beer, or, look back at process deviations and kind of make a testing plan from there. And if we see something, we obviously will go make further action and communicate that with our distributors and make the best company choice we can. But I would say, yeah, it's kind of knowing the difference between what the valid complaint is and what will be detrimental to, your company and the customer versus just, somebody that has a little bit too much time on their hands.
Great, thank you. All right, Michelle, what are your thoughts on consumer feedback?
I think of it as a learning opportunity. If you're getting a lot of feedback from your product where, like they said, it is consistent and the same, you have data to trend, that's incredibly useful. You can improve your processes, you can improve your stability or your recipe or anything of that. I don't really have too much to add to that, except that whenever I would get, feedback on a new recipe, it helped me make choices, right? Whether I want to go with this new seasonal one or that new seasonal one, or whether or not something would work better amongst the people who are selling it and how they were able to sell it. So
great, thank you. All right, Adam, and I'm curious too for Allagash. I mean, who's monitoring these websites as well?
Yeah, so I'm glad I'm not in charge of our social media and having to deal with all that. Glad someone else does that. But we get feedback through the info@allagash.com email, which many of those, if there's quality complaints, those get filtered right up to our brewmaster and QC team. As Carrie mentioned, we have a form that we use as well whenever there is an issue in the market, whether it's coming from a wholesaler rep or an account or just a customer at a bar. We can basically select where that source of information came from, what the issue is, and if possible, we try to get photos of it. We try to get the batch and date, the batch number and date code on all the products, so we can filter that back up to our QC team who can identify if this is actually an issue or if this is just an account level issue. Yeah, I mean, whenever there's an opportunity to go into the account and see it yourself, we try to do that. But also just setting the standard for your distributor reps. North Carolina is a very large state. I'm not going to drive to the Outer Banks to taste a potentially sour draft line, but I would love for my distributor rep to just have it in his head that if he's getting a complaint, Adam from Allagash is going to ask him for the batch number, the code on the keg. He's going to want a photo of it. So just having that instilled in the sales teams that you're working with, I think is important as well. But yeah, I mean, I think everybody else covered most of the major points here. I'm more of just like one of the outlets of information that's getting filtered back to the brewery.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Thank you. Yeah. All right. We have a question. Would you replace beer in the market based on the feedback that you're hearing? And what circumstances would result in product recalls? It's a really great question, in the sense of what's the threshold, right? And for what specific reasons, or what would be like a big enough red flag to do a full recall, which is logistically challenging and could potentially, you know, hurt the brand. Michelle, I know you have some experience with recall, so can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so as far as recalls go, you have 3 different classes of recall. There's a recall where it's based on like the safety of the consumer. So if somebody consumes that beer, they can reasonably become seriously ill or maybe even die. So that's the worst kind of recall, the one you want to avoid at all costs, right? That's a class 1 recall. You have to take it back. Class 2 is basically you could make somebody sick, but there are probably no long-term effects. You're probably not going to make someone die. Again, you probably want to bring that back because you don't want to be making people sick. Class 3 recall is a quality recall. So my beer doesn't taste the way it should, or it's a weird color, or it's foaming, but it's because of a non-harmful bacterial infection, be something like that. So the most common recall you see for beer is glass, right? Because we're bottling in glass, that production line, there's a lot of moving pieces. And so if you have to do a glass recall, that can be really expensive, but you do have to get those back because if somebody swallowed that, you know, they could potentially cut up their insides. And I have a story for you if you want to hear it.
Please.
About a recall. Okay. So this is one of my favorite ones to talk about chemical contamination. Basically, it's a guy who's drinking Budweiser, and it's his 3rd beer of the night, and he takes his first sip of that beer and instantly vomits blood. And it was because there was caustic chemical cleanser in the beer. So their operations had messed up. They ended up with caustic in the beer. The guy swallows it. His GI system is messed up for life. And it's something simple that could easily happen. But it definitely costs them a lot of time and money. And it's well worthwhile to put controls in place to avoid those kind of things.
Yes, to say the least. My goodness. All right, Carrie, what are your thoughts from Highland's point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Michelle. She obviously has a lot of recall experience, but you know, our biggest concern is glass. And if we see that, as Adam said earlier, photos are the biggest help if we can't get straight to that account or customer. Because a lot of times, you know, it's tough depending on your distribution footprint. But like I said, just 0 tolerance for that. And we'll immediately hold the product wherever it is, get it out of the market and figure out what that root cause is from there. You know, fortunately in beer, not many pathogens survive. So we definitely have that on our side as opposed to, you know, other beverage or food industry companies. So I would say from there on, it's just kind of making sure you do your due diligence and figuring out what the actual problem is. Chemical is obviously another huge concern, but fortunately, it's pretty simple to put those process control points in place and make sure you look for that. So I would say, yeah, just kind of triaging what the problem is, and if it's something serious that will harm the customer, you definitely have to stop it and get it out of the market as quickly as possible. And that's where your relationships with the distributors and accounts really come into play and are hugely helpful. And I would say also just, you know, kind of making sure you communicate with them along the way of what your process is and what's happening, and trying to keep everyone as informed as you can will really do your company a good thing in the end.
Would there be an instance that, you know, maybe you guys have already defined and determined where the customer wouldn't be in any type of health risk, but that the quality of the beer is just not there? So are there specific kind of, I don't know what you want to call them, I guess, yeah, like off flavors or fermentation developments that would cause you to pull a beer from the market?
Yeah, I would say, you know, that's kind of a bigger issue. And if it's not something harmful, if it's something like, you know, diastaticus would be a big concern, or, you know, all the beer spoilers, lactobacillus in unwanted beers. I think, you know, we have a quality governance now, and we would meet and kind of decide on and get the company president in on everything, and make a group decision on whether it's really detrimental to that brand. and how Highland feels about having it out there or not. I think, you know, it's probably different for every company. But in terms of keeping things true to a brand, you know, we do everything we can to, if we see that, try to get it out of the market and try to remedy this situation, whether it's replacing the beer with a different batch or something of that nature, I think is important. But, you know, I think it would definitely depends on the size of your company and your culture of quality and your leader. That all really comes into play for those things and making those decisions.
Yes, absolutely. Never an easy one when it doesn't have to do with like health.
Yeah,
So,
and I would say also like product loss is a big one too. So if you have, you know, somebody losing half of their can of beer when they open it, we don't want that. So we do the best we can to try to remedy those situations and either replace, you know, that customer, give them a free case of beer or something of that nature.
Absolutely. All right, Adam, what are your thoughts on recall?
We are really picky at Allagash, so I think we would absolutely pull any product back under any of the categories that Michelle was talking about. You know, I mean, obviously, if there's a consumer safety issue, that's a no-brainer. But I think also a lot of it is, you know, look at the health of your brand long term. There's over 8,000 breweries in the U.S. and a million different beers. You know, as Jess, as you were saying earlier, like, your first impression with a beer might be your only impression, and you might not get to the space where you think, oh, this beer, you know, something went wrong with the brewing process. They might just think, oh, Allagash makes awful beer, and I'm not going to drink this ever again. So we're very picky about it. We will dump a batch if it doesn't meet our standards. We are more on the preventative side though than the, I guess, recall side. We haven't had to go through a recall yet. But knowing how Allagash is with their QC standards, I would imagine if there was any sort of off flavor, we'd pull it immediately. But at the same time, we're also a larger regional craft brewery, so financially losing a batch of beer, you know, we'll survive that. So we have that ability to do so. But yeah, I think that's all. I think that's all I really got. I mean, we've had some batches in the past that have not passed panel, our censor panel, and like we had one batch of Saison a few years ago, and we donated it to a distillery down the road, and they made basically a rye whiskey out of it. So there's cool things you can do with it that are kind of good ways to make the best of a bad situation, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find that, you know, when I've seen it kind of on the internet, like Instagram, when a brewery does kind of own up to generally getting like more quality issues versus, you know, like dangerous health stuff, that people seem really appreciative of it. You know, I'm sure it's like terrifying to have to like put that out into the world, but the response always seems really supportive, which is always nice to receive, right? Great. Well, thank you guys. All right, so I'm gonna kind of direct this one more towards Adam. How important is the distributor relationship to the success and stability of the product? I mean, you've already kind of talked a lot about you know, maintaining a good relationship. What does that look like from like a sales standpoint? Like, dive into how often are you communicating, things like that, to nurture that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the most important part of as far as quality control and on my side of, or you know, my impact on the QC channel here. I like to treat the warehouse employees at the distributors like they own the place. You know, those guys are the gatekeepers to your beer. You know, like I said earlier, if you have a good relationship with them and there's an opportunity for them to put your beer in the cooler and they know you and they like you, they might just go ahead and do that for you, you know, and they're willing to do a lot more things than they're contractually obligated just because they have a good relationship with you. You know, I also mentioned it earlier, like just having a set pretty much standard of your response to any QC complaints is great. Like I don't get any QC complaints sent to me without the batch number, the code, and the picture, because they know I'm going to ask for it. I don't know, what else can I add here? Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, kind of like maybe pre-COVID, you know, there was probably a lot more like hanging out potentially as well, like more social dynamics with your distributors.
Yeah, I like to, we do this thing where we'll do an unroused Allagash white next to a roused Allagash white to really demonstrate to somebody the effect of storing a keg upside down versus not. And they look like totally different beers. I call it Allagash White Light when it's unroused. It literally looks like a Miller Lite. And then when you've correctly roused the yeast, you can see the difference. You can taste the difference. So those are kind of fun things to do with your wholesaler team to really drive it home. So when they're in accounts, they're talking to their retailers about the same thing. Yeah, I think that's all I really got on this one.
Yeah. And Michelle, I know you have some experience as well with kind of distributor relationships and how important that is. So if you want to speak to that.
Yeah. So when I was at one of the breweries I worked at, we had kind of a strained relationship with our distributor, and it's really an unfortunate place to be in. And it was for a number of different reasons, between management change and things like that. But like our beer would go out shipped on trucks, unrefrigerated, and our beer they wouldn't do first in, first out for us. Even at like a beer show, we wouldn't be well supported. And it was because of that strange relationship. So there was a lot of that dynamic that helps with sales and quality that was completely missing in that relationship. And the other thing is, once you sign with a distributor, you're kind of stuck unless you find a way to worm your way out. And so for us, it was a big stalling point. Like we were not able to grow in those markets, and it was a bad situation.
Yeah,
So,
that's tough. What ended up happening?
the brewery changed hands. So they had a few different owners, but finally they sold. The last time they changed their name so they could get out of the relationship with their distributor. And that way they were able to move on. So new management, new name. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always like so unfortunate. I mean, you hear about stories like that, across the country where it becomes toxic. And, one would like to think that a distributor would recognize that it's no longer a good relationship for the brewery and would, let them move on. But instead, it does seem to turn into almost like a sabotage situation and, with the quality of your product, which is obviously what we're talking about here. So yeah. Definitely a scary dynamic that you want to avoid. So sweet. So it's kind of the last kind of specific sales question. So Adam, I know you guys work with distributors, but what does it look like when it comes to forming a relationship with retailers? So like, how involved are you or an Allagash, past and present, in kind of facilitating some of those retailer relationships and like really the intentionality behind like market placement?
Yeah, I mean, we have a field sales rep at least in every, like at the minimum in every market. So, a big part of our jobs is going out and cultivating those relationships with retailers. And I mean, from a quality standpoint, it's a great opportunity to develop, or it's a great, I guess, doorway into developing a relationship is just talking about the quality of your beer, doing, staff trainings, educating their staff, helping them sell the product. If you're willing to go the extra step and teach the staff how to sell the beer for you, the management, the owners of the retail establishment definitely going to appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I spend a ton of time hitting accounts and talking to customers because ultimately it'll help my relationship with my distributor as well. The more beer that they're able to sell, the more beer I'm able to sell them. So it's just kind of in everyone's best interest that I'm out in the market,
Absolutely. What do you look for in a retailer? So kind of like-mindedness. What does that look like for Allagash in the market?
I mean, we look for attention to detail. Like we love it when people pour our beer into our glasses. It's with a nice Allagash chalice, traditional Belgian thing. When people really, put extra steps like that those are great. Willing to work with us on correct storage of our beer is awesome. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what else I look for in a retailer. Ultimately, will they buy my beer is a great start. But
that's the first question.
You're right. Yeah, I don't know if I have a good answer for that one.
Awesome. All right. So next question is back to everybody. So describe the relationship between sales and the quality team, and how do you work together to ensure the best product is reaching consumers? So Anna, you want to take this one?
Yeah. When I worked in quality control, it was always really important to me that our sales team was aware, like knew who the quality team was, that we connected with each other as frequently as we could for coworkers who were offsite, and that they understood what we were doing for the beer and were able to communicate that as they were trying to sell it, and that they understood what the beer was supposed to, the expectation of the beer was out in the market, and to make sure that the relationship was good natured, if you will, between quality and sales. Production and sales don't always have a great relationship, and working to make that as like positive as it can be when you have one or the other that may feel like they're being held up by the other, making sure that they understand that they're both doing it for the whatever they're doing for the best of the brewery, and that we're all trying to push things in the same direction. I would say were the highest priorities in developing that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, honing in on quality and can cause some tough decisions that trickles down to make everybody's job, at least temporarily, more challenging at times. So I can definitely see that. All right, Carrie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that relationship, like Anna said, can definitely be a little bit tough to build, but it's super important to have the sales team on your side from a quality standpoint. Doing things like off-character training, like we've talked about, and new product descriptive analysis. That's all just really important for them to be able to sell the beer, one, but also know what to look for and to give us the proper information that we need to, make ourselves and the beer better in the end. So in-house, we have release panel all the time, but we also try to do a lot of off-character trainings and ones that are specific either to, draft line contamination versus, chemical and all of that kind of stuff. We try to kind of categorize it to which teams it would be most important to. So, working with the production team on certain things and the sales team and just company wide, making sure that we have those resources available to them has been super helpful. Yeah.
Sweet, thank you.
Like I said, building that customer feedback loop is huge here too. Not to keep revisiting that, but that's really, where all that information comes back from, and just making sure it's being monitored properly and you have everyone on board to be willing to get you that information, because, everybody's super busy and not everyone wants to take the time to fill out a form, but just trying to get that in the works is very, very helpful in the end.
Absolutely. Adam, what are your thoughts from the sales side of things? And also, I'm kind of curious for you specifically, you're located in North Carolina, and Allagash is located in Maine. So kind of how does that contribute to the dynamics for you?
Well, I'm kind of lucky, I guess. I'm unique in the fact that I used to work at the actual brewery, so I know a lot of these people already. But pre-COVID, when we go back to the brewery 3 times a year, like I mentioned earlier, we would spend a 2-hour block with the QC team, whether it was looking at the lab and the new piece of equipment and what that translates to our beer downstream, or if it's, like Carrie was mentioning about draft line contamination training, that kind of thing. We spend a lot of time with the QC team. They come on our sales calls, our monthly sales calls from time to time to talk about different things. So, I guess at the end of the day, as a salesperson, you are the extension of the brewery, so we should be kind of echoing what our QC department is, the practices that they're doing. So the more time you can spend with them, the better you can talk about it. And ultimately, the more beer you can sell, assuming you have a good QC program. So, I think just in a general practice of any business is to not silo your departments too much. There should always be some interaction between teams. It's best for everybody.
It absolutely is. Thank you. All right, Michelle, what's your experience with that dynamic?
I actually didn't have too much to add to that. I just wanted to stress that company culture of quality across the board, whether it's production or sales or quality, if everyone has the same goal in mind, the same ideals, then everyone's more successful. So, and if that a lot of the time comes from management from the top down, so their ethics, their ideals, their thoughts and where they put their resources to get there are a big part of that. So it's really, really all about the whole company culture.
Great, thank you all. All right, so how should a business approach staff training with regards to looking out for quality? So if you want to maybe dive into some more structured details surrounding, yes, like what a training program looks like for staff. Carrie, you want to take that one first?
Sure, yeah. So one thing that we do is we have set monthly trainings now in terms of sensory. So like I said, we kind of split it up into different categories and look for and try to train people's palates. Like Anna said, it's really not something that comes naturally, despite what, people may think is learning, what isoamyl characteristic tastes like, what characteristic is a dirty sock versus, what are the good flavors as well that we're looking for in our product. And so we have set that up to where it's monthly and it's open to the entire company. We try to kind of suggest for certain departments what classes will be good for them to take and the most helpful. But everyone can sign up for any class. They can take all of them if they'd like every month. So that's been very helpful and just kind of getting everyone on board and educating our staff on what to look for out in the market in their specific department, whether it's production, looking for certain chemicals or packaging. We try to cover all of those bases there. And then as well as, just having a regular release panel where if, things fail on that panel, we'll, kind of hold the product and take the proper procedures to either escalate it to an advanced panel or just kind of figure out what's going wrong in the brewery to try to fix those kind of things. Yeah, but I would say just definitely a lot of sensory education. And also, like Adam said, when our whole sales team is together, which unfortunately, doesn't happen too often at the home brewery, but we do, they're always welcome in the lab. They know our door is always open, and any process that they want to see or learn more about, we really try to bring them in on it and explain to them to the best of our ability, what we're doing and why this beer tastes like this. And this is how many times we test this beer. And this is what, we're looking for in the end in terms of finished product and all of that stuff. So yeah, I would say just, having an open door policy is really important from a quality standpoint.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carrie. All right, Anna, what are your thoughts on trainings?
Yeah, I would say training takes time, and you have to really commit that time and deliberately train your coworkers on how to spot QA issues and confirm when there aren't any. And that's critically important. And it's actually really committing to it, scheduling it, and making it happen is really hard. And you have to find a way. And it sounds like Carrie's found an excellent way with this sensory, which is awesome. It's also worth noting that at least within production of your product, if you're training people on how to do their job the right way, then you are training quality. And so you're saying with your culture every time you're teaching someone clearly how to do their work that you care about quality. You need to make sure with your culture that if you have a coworker who's calling out a quality issue, that they're never discouraged or met with negativity from that. And you need to follow up with them on what happened with it, communicate it all the way to the conclusion. Otherwise, any training that you give them isn't going to mean anything because they're not going to think that it's important to you. Thank people for paying attention. It's important. And even if they're doing a part of their job that's expected for them to do, it doesn't mean that you're not allowed to show a particular appreciation for them doing it. And it can make a really big difference in it mattering to them whether or not the beer is the way it should be.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And I apologize for the TV. I had to move into a different room. But that's a really important point, I think, as far as like encouraging people to speak their mind about sensory issues. And, you know, I think creating a culture where it's received and it's not defended is really, really important and not always easy. All right, Michelle, what are your thoughts on training approach?
Jumping off from Anna's, I think a lot of what she was talking to is like encouraging buy-in from everyone in the company. So you have to tell them why they're doing what they're doing, why it matters, and why it makes it such a big deal to the company, and help them feel pride in the product in your trainings. So that way, if they feel like it is their everyday work that's making that product as amazing as it is, then that goes a long way towards helping them pay attention and understand and learn those trainings. We see a lot of companies that do that, you know, initial welcome training. This is what, you know, we want to see. This is what we're about. They bring in, you know, the key players to help them understand what the culture of the company is. And then they move through and regularly have these trainings that help them update their positions, make it clear where they're making improvements and changing, and actively working through those changes with good trainings. It's a big part of it.
Great, thank you. And Adam, what has your experience been with being trained or training others?
I kind of look at this question. I looked at this question as like from the retail side of things. So I think when you receive feedback from a retailer or a wholesaler, it's really important to thank them for the feedback immediately. Like that's the first thing you do, is say thank you for keeping an eye on this, because it reiterates the fact that quality is important to us. We want to thank them for having it be of importance to them. So I think that's a really important piece. Is you know, I think Anna was talking about it, how making sure that feedback is not only received, but you know, you're not getting defensive with it. You know, this is a good thing. I know from the training side at Allagash, we have a sensory panel that, you know, tastes every single batch of beer, and it's about half of our employees that are on it. It's almost like a badge of honor to be on the sensory panel. You have to go through some training. So setting that as like a culture, almost like a cultural aspect of like, it's an honor to be on the sensory panel. I think that's kind of a cool way we've done it at Allagash to, you know, really drive quality into our culture. It's worked for us.
How does one receive the honor of being asked?
You have to go through a lot of classes with Carl. Carl's the head of our sensory panel. A lot of training, and then you can have a score on how good of a taster you are, how accurate you are. They don't let the salespeople do it, which is probably for the best. But yeah, I mean, it's a really cool program. We basically statistically certify whether or not a batch of beer is a batch of beer. You know, like this is Allagash weight or not.
Absolutely. All right, and this is the last question to wrap up our time together. We're gonna leave everybody with a piece of advice. So, you know, as maybe like budding entrepreneurs, what advice would you give them related to quality and product out in the marketplace? Michelle, you wanna go first?
Sure. So I guess one thing is that it takes a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of resources to achieve the level of quality that you want and that you need in the marketplace. And so be patient, but keep at it, because it's well worth it and you'll see the returns tenfold.
Absolutely. All right, Anna, what's your advice?
I'd say pay attention to your product, have standards for it, keep good records, and have a recall plan and practice it.
Love it. All right, Carrie.
I Yeah, I would say something we've all touched on is just try to build that company quality culture and get everyone on the same page and, think quality minded and just really care about your product. And, in the end, I think that does your company a ton of good.
Great, thank you. And Adam, what will you send everybody off with?
So this is a classic Rob Todd-ism. Rob Todd is the owner of Allagash. This is the first thing he told me when I started on sales. If you say you're going to do something, you better do it. They might not remember if you do it, but they'll certainly remember it if you don't do it. I think that works for quality and just general life advice. Whatever you say you're going to do, just follow through and do it.
Absolutely, all four very, very great, good advice for everybody. Dwayne put this in the chat, but we have our 5th and final part of the series. Time really does fly, that's wild. It's gonna be about hiring people, so HR and management tools. It will be held Thursday, December 17th, same time, sorry, 3 to 4:30, 5-ish, and he put the link in the chat to sign up. Thank you so much to Anna, Michelle, Adam, and Carrie. I know that while this is certainly for the community, I personally, as a business owner, benefit immensely from these conversations. So that's my selfish thing going on, but really great to get to know you guys a little more and hear your perspectives on quality and sales out in the market in the craft beer industry. So I hope you all have a good rest of your evening, and thanks everybody for joining. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks.
Appreciate you having us.